Hello, and welcome back to Sharing a Chapter a Day. This is me, and today I will be reading Chapter 101 of Engagement in Peril by Dara, Odoe, Sok. Chapter 101 is titled Service Week with a Hand Job. There was a moment at boot camp when we were all allowed to be ourselves for a brief moment. There was a basketball shootout sponsored by AT&T then, where we were allowed to participate and compete in. I did well enough to receive a $20 calling card prize then. As for Shinshin, he wanted no part in any fun or extracurricular activity on and about the base then. He stuck to himself and watched from afar. I felt free for that one brief moment, basking in my own world and not having to worry about taking orders from anyone, perhaps for a mere second. But back to reality quickly followed after we were all lined up and were marching back to our living barracks once again. During boot camp, we were required to participate in 1 week of Naval Basic Service Week, where each recruit was assigned to various tasks throughout the base. And the assignment varied, from taking out the trash to sitting around in an office and answering phone calls. I was assigned to one of the base galley, and my first title there was a GI runner where I pushed and ran the U's and cleaned dishes and utensils here and there for recruits' usage. It was pretty easy duty, getting wet at most. From there I moved on to being a swabby for several days where I wiped down tables and spills. And at my last job during service week I worked in the scullery where I and a few other had to rinse, wash, and clean up the used dishes and utensils for reuse. Being in the steamy washroom finally gave me the opportunity to meet and greet the opposite sex. I was actually meeting a female. It was the first time I talked to a female in all these many past weeks and months. Since my last day in high school, working in the scullery also allowed us to be out of uniform and in our t-shirts, and while we washed the dishes, we would accidentally get the girl's t-shirt wet. Accidentally. It was the only turn on we had the whole time at basics. Those girls who got wet didn't seem to mind what we did to them. It seemed like it was expected. They too enjoyed our company and seemed to be as lonely and as horny as we were then. I'm glad I was able to work with them then. And fortunately, there for me then, one good thing came out of it. I was able to bond and made a real connection with Heather Gaffey. After a day or two while working with the opposite sex, I got one of the girls' company number and wrote to her several times during our time together at basics. Her name was Heather Gaffey. She was pretty cute. She stood about 5'6" with dirty blonde hair, blue eyes, and a nice shapely body. Heather was going to intelligence school to become an intelligence specialist for the U.S. Navy then. After basics, and her assigned A school designator, Heather had a nice set of knockers on her, firm and delicate, and while working with her, I would sometime daydream about having those delicious bosoms jab in my mouth while she nursed and took care of me like a famished infant. God, I was starving then for those luscious memories. They were There were many cute and attractive girls at boot camp, but after a while and hard time spent at basic, every girl you see seemed to look good to you, no matter if they were unattractive, dogs or whatnot. It was a norm to see things for what they are not while going through those rigorous trials and time where your body and mind was driven to its maximum, and your mind and spirit were broken and remodeled into government's tool. Usually during our washing tasks in the steamy washroom together, the buxom gal Heather and I would wash side by side, in pairs. One could say at times our hips and side hits and touch each other, as though we were banging into each other on purpose. We both didn't mind the rubbing and constant touching. I was enjoying the constant contact and blow from her, and during the night shower I would jack off to her image and figures, mesmerized in my head, and cheerfully I was hoping she was doing the same on her end several barracks down from mine. Secretly, Heather and I were sending each other built-up sexual messages, and our warranted physical intentions for each other, and happily. On our last day together during service week, she and I were able to pet each other heavily in the midst of the steam that arose from all the hot water that we were using to wash the dishes, trays, and utensils then. The other washing room crew didn't mind what we were doing. They kept to their business and enjoyed the show that Heather and I had put on for them to enjoy on that steamy, hot afternoon during our so-called service week. Heather and I timed it perfectly. As the stream of steam rushed out of the gigantic hot washing machine, the dragon, we would sometime call it, she and I snapped to it and bit at each other as though we were rabid animals. While our tongues and mouths engulfed one another's face, my hands grabbed and pulled at her large bosom, squeezing and jerked at them as though I was picking and pulling all at some sort of fruit. Her hands were quick. They zoomed into my loose dungaree trouser after all the weight I had lost, and made their way underneath my whitey-tighty as they aroused my dormant phallus. After a few quick strokes, he was hard and firm. Heather has awakened, the horny, sleeping giant then. Skillfully she jerked me up and down. Her constant strokes sped up accordingly. She wasn't embarrassed, not a bit at all. I don't think she cared what other may think or may say then. I didn't have time to come to my senses. I was feeling good from her grab and heavy touching, and I didn't give a shit what the other in the room was thinking either. Our wild pleasuring of each other only lasted seconds, no more than a minute, but worth it all. And after the steam and some of the heat dissipated, we acted as though nothing had happened. But as for me, I couldn't stand still for the life of me. The nerves in my spine and back tingled and jerked as I tried to calm myself down. I had jizz all over myself then. Her few heavy strokes had got me off, and I had soiled all over her hands and soiled myself beneath my fruit of the loom and dungaree trouser with my gooey, milky white substance spread and stretched while soaking itself underneath. Heather ravishingly giggled and cleaned up, washing her gooey, contaminated hand in the soapy hot water along with the trays and utensils as she devilishly looked at me over what had just happened. Looking at her gave me blasting joy and excitement. I wanted so bad to take her atop that wet aluminum table and pound into her like there was no tomorrow. I had to hold back. I just grounded my teeth and smirked back in her direction, quietly mimicking thanks in her direction. In return she smiled, and we both laughed out loud at the same time, to the amusement of our onlooker. We spent the rest of the day smiling side by side. In my head it was just her and me then. We went about our usual cleaning business for the rest of the day, but took some quick glances at each other throughout the day event. I went back to help with washing and rinsing off the dishes, trays, and utensils, and left my dirty self below to mend for itself until I got back to the barracks that evening. That was a productive day that I just had, and I thought it was nice. One of the few nice days I had in a long time, in whenever. Heather had put such an amazing smile on me then. She had given me a very exciting hand job that afternoon, that after our long time together. I was glad that I worked in the scullery and then, and got to meet Heather then during service week. Later on that night, after writing a little thank you letter to Heather for making my last day of cleaning worth it, and before our nightly prayer, I told Shinchin about what had happened to me that afternoon while washing and cleaning after the recruit's meal, and believingly urging me to tell him more, he laughed and stated, "Congrats, Dara, congrats." I slept well that night, thinking of what more could have happened if Heather and I would have just had a few more moments together. Heather and I lost contact shortly after we had graduated from boot camp. We didn't have much We didn't have each other's home address, and we both went different ways to separate A school and duty station. She went to intelligence school. I went to hospital corpsman A school. I wish that she and I could have had more time together. Maybe she was the one then. That's what I like to think at times. It was nice to have met Heather then, and I am thankful for that. Unknown to me or to anyone else in our company or the command, Shinchin had been lucky with the opposite sex on base as well during his many trips to the mailroom and such for mail calls. He mentioned it to me later on the night before graduating basic. Shinchin stated that he gets to mess around all the time when he runs into a female or two on the base during his mail runs, mainly at the mailroom area. Shinchin always had his way with the ladies. There was just something about him that attracted both male and female toward him. Shinchin had the aroma and vibe about him. Usually the RDC in charge of the mailroom left the mailroom petty office recruit to sort out the mail and package on their own. So they got away with fooling around, whatnot. Often, after some time in getting know each other, Shinshin had and the young female recruit would sneak off to fuck and suck at each other in the supply and storage room, fucking and unloading into and onto each other as though there was no tomorrow, he had mentioned. Shinshin was quite versed when it comes to intimacy then, and he seemed to give the ladies what they needed. Shinshin seemed to be getting all sorts of ass all the time then. Seemed that all the recruits at Basic were horny as perverted as I was during the entire time there, doing, getting down, getting what they can from each other. Without hesitation, these lonely recruits would fuck the lights out of each other when no one was watching. And here I am, thinking that I was the only one, all horned up and ready to explode at any moment. That's why I always have a smirk on my face, Dara, he joyfully admitted and stated during our trivial conversation before taps and such. I laughed and congratulated him as well, and we all had to sin sometime. And only God knows what Shinshin and I have done then while we would struggle and build our relations during the trials of Navy boot camp. Back in the barracks, every night before we went to bed, we would pray with our religious petty officer, who led the prayers, and on some lonely night, while praying, you could hear grown men cry, some of which were whimpering and such during our prayers. Hell, I even cried because I missed my mother and my siblings then, but Shinshin never made a sound or shed any tears or whimpered for anyone the entire time at Basics. That was so weird and strange about him. He never showed any that sort of missing emotions. Thank you for listening. This is the end of chapter 101. Be on the lookout for chapter 102, titled Outstanding Recruit Rescinded at Hassan. This is Do, Ra, me, and I'll see you later. Thank you.